Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Rabel Akhund, and this is another episode of Build It and They Will Come in the Akhund Forbes series. Today, I'm very glad to have Mr. Muneeb Maayr, who is the founder of Bykea, which is probably the most successful ride-sharing app company in Pakistan. It has one of the largest networks of bikers. They have a personnel of 65,000 riders across the country, and it has just reached break even, which is great news for everyone. Formerly, he was also the co-founder of Daraz, which is a leading online marketplace and which was acquired a few years ago by Alibaba. Muneeb is a graduate of the University of Virginia, a dear friend, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for narrating the last 25 years of my life.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more that I've missed out.
More than 2 decades. I mean, we're not getting any younger, huh?
That's true. That's true. We've known each other for a few years. Well,
Yes.
almost a decade now.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I moved to Karachi about 11 years ago, and so I think I
Yes.
met you right about that time.
Right about that time.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Muneeb, so let's start off from your experience at Bykea, and then we'll work our way back.
Yeah.
It's profitable now.
Yeah, well, it's probably one of the only ride-sharing businesses in the world that's been able to turn around a profit. So it's not been easy. It's been, we've been in an environment, a very competitive environment, and then of course, the economy hasn't been kind to the demographic that we pander to. Mm-hmm. So it's been a struggle. But it's good to now not have to worry and look forward to a future. And I think the worst is behind us.
Yeah. But do you ever stop worrying? Because as a founder, this is like your baby, right? And we never stop worrying about our children. Yeah. Do you ever stop worrying about your company?
I was in Hawaii last month, and I was swimming in the ocean, and there was a 75-year-old who had a helicopter skiing business, and something had gone wrong. He'd missed, getting his service on time somewhere, and so he was freaking out about it, right? And I was like, at this age, do you really like the stress? And his response was like, if I'm not stressed, if I don't have to worry about something, I'm either dead or broke. Yeah. So
that's true. Exactly.
So I think some level of stress is good because it allows you to have something to look forward to the next day.
That's true. And I want to talk more about how you manage stress, because running the larger the company, the larger the problems, and the more is at stake. But before that, I want to touch upon when you started. I remember when we met. I think you were in the Raz at that time, and you were thinking about other things to do. Yeah. There were quite a few things that you were thinking about, right? Yeah. And I remember the germination of this particular idea. You were thinking about the Far East models and all of that.
Yeah.
Out of all of the businesses that you could have started, you had a successful startup.
Right.
You had a good exit from there. Out of all the businesses that you could have started, why did you choose Bykea? And I'll tell you why I asked this, because, again, it's a very personal thing. Creating a business, I'm a firm believer, within yourself, you have capacity for one or two great loves, right, in life, and I'm talking about people. And I think it's the same with a business that you create. Mm-hmm. It's a labor of love. How did you choose upon this particular labor of love?
Yeah. So I think you and I have the privilege of being Western trained, educated, and so forth. We worked there as well. And so what we bring to the table, being back in our hometowns or where we grew up or our country, is that we can look at what has worked in other geographies, and we can figure out how to implement parts of that in our world, and hope that has some level of impact, right? Because you don't need to make a lot of money when you compare, for example, to living in New York, for example, right?
To sustain yourself.
To live in Pakistan, a comfortable, happy life, right? And if you can provide some level of impact, and I don't mean to say it in a, I don't want to be facetious about it, but I think everyone is trying to sell themselves a narrative, right? And for me, the narrative was, what can I do for this very large group of people I represent, where I grew up, right? And how can I have a larger impact? Because Pakistan's got this huge population, but it's a very poor population. It's a very young population. And just to backtrack, like my experience right after college was setting up a back office for a company called SNL that ultimately sold to Standard & Poor's. So that was just wage arbitrage, hiring people in Islamabad, about 600-700 people, and in helping employ those people work for Standard & Poor's in the US. So it was wage arbitrage, right? And it allowed basically analyst coverage even at night in the US for a lot of the financial services clients of SNL. And so that was leveraging the internet for employing people in Pakistan. And then Daraz after that, I did Daraz for about 4 years, was leveraging the internet for doing trade within Pakistan, right? And Bykea then became, how do you leverage the internet for the common man? The common man doesn't have a lot of assets in Pakistan, quite poor. So they've got a motorbike, a 70cc motorbike, so they're kind of like scooters, but there are a lot of them. There are over 20 million of them in Pakistan. And then he's got a smartphone. So how do you sort of leverage those two assets for leveraging the internet beyond entertainment? Because in our part of the world, people are either just watching videos, playing games, TikToking. It's all just frivolous, right? So that they're not really using it for making money. And so if you're half literate and you can use an app, we can localize it, we can customize it, and I found the opportunity to be able to translate Western ideas in a local environment and be able to raise money for that as well, right? Because
which is the hardest bit.
Which is very hard as well, right? So I think it's beautiful having the privilege of exposure, whether it's podcasts or just a network of friends or people you meet at conferences or when you travel, to see that certain things have happened in other parts of the world. So for example, with Bykea, I've sort of seen it happen in Indonesia, in Vietnam. There are many examples to also learn from Latin America, like Colombia. The Metro Bus project, which is sort of a tram but is regular buses, in Lahore and Islamabad, was copied from Bogota in Colombia. So I think there are lots of things to learn, and I think we're always, every few years, I think every about 7-8 years, we're trying to find a new purpose, right? And in whatever purpose you can sell yourself, whatever narrative you can sell yourself.
Yeah, and this was something that you were fairly comfortable with, and you thought about it. But you mentioned that we are a relatively poor country where the common man isn't particularly well off. Right? The GDP per capita is low. In an industry where there are a lot of price wars, particularly in the ride-sharing industry, how do you? And then on top of that, you're in a country which is relatively poor. How do you mix the two? How do you survive? How do you attain profitability?
Well, I mean, I think the best example I can give you is the telecom industry, right? So why would a telecom company want to open in Pakistan, right? The average revenue per user is very low compared to, for example, the United States.
Of course,
right? So the ARPU in Pakistan, the average revenue per user in Pakistan, has really hovered between $1 and $3, right? Which is very, very low. But what Pakistan does have, it has a lot of people, right? So if you multiply that ARPU with millions of people, then it can become a sizable business. And so if you are trying to build anything in this geography, it has to pander to the masses.
Yeah.
Right. And more than half the population is, I think, under the age of 20 or somewhere around that range. Right. So a lot of these kids are at some point going to start using the internet. And of course, they'll use the internet for fun and frolic like TikTok.
Yeah.
But they'll also need to start using the internet for utility. And I think you've just got to find those pockets of opportunities. And I'll give you an example, right? So Dove, for example, Dove as a shampoo was not very successful at selling the entire bottle in Pakistan because it's an expensive bottle by comparison for the poor. But what they started doing is they started making these sachets,
Yes.
right? And now you can go to like these long tail retail stores in the boonies in the country.
And they have those sachets.
And you can buy a sachet and it's a
One-time use, yeah.
One-time use. But you're able to now address a larger demographic, but in smaller sizes.
Yes.
So you just got to sell a lot of candy and lots of it.
Okay. And you're not just a ride-sharing app, are you? You're also a logistics company, if I may call you that.
Yeah. So initially, after Daraz, and Daraz was an e-commerce business,
Yes.
very similar to Amazon, right? That business ultimately got acquired by Alibaba Group, but essentially in Pakistan, because most payments happen in cash, we are one of the least banked countries in the world. So most transactions are in cash, but similarly in India, it's also cash and delivery, so very similar.
65% of ride sharing is on cash
Sure.
around the world, globally, if you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what that means is whoever is going to be delivering your parcel has to collect cash when that parcel is delivered.
Correct.
Right. So when we made Bykea, the idea was to leverage this guy on a motorbike, not just to take people from A to B, but also to move parcels A to B. So within the city, if you're in an urban city and you order something from that same city, it's quite likely that they will leverage our platform to courier or ship that parcel to you, and you'll get it in 30 minutes. So in many ways, e-commerce is a lot faster in Pakistan than it is in the United States. Because in the United States, everything has to go through a process and distances, of course, whether it's China, whether it's the United States, whether it's India, they're huge distances, right? But in countries where most of the economic activity is centered just around like a few cities, right? You can have e-commerce SLAs in terms of delivery that are unparalleled across the world. So I think there are also opportunities, right? So we can do delivery a lot faster than Amazon can.
Of course, yeah. But can you do well-timed deliveries, right? Can you sort of promise that a package will arrive within a time slot?
The beauty about GPS is everything is tracked, right? And a GPS is very cheap. Now you can even leverage a GPS in a used old smartphone. The smartphone can only be for like $30, right?
Of course.
So all our drivers are tracked. So in a sense, we're kind of a airport control room, right? But we're not guiding any of the guys on when to land and when to basically take off. We just provide GPS capability for both parties to be able to see. Because, for example, you could have placed an order in this room, but moved to another part of the house, or which doesn't have access to the street, and the driver will be able to see that as well, right? So,
of course,
so it's getting more and more intelligent by the day, and of course, we're running on the rails of Google Maps,
of course.
Which is getting better as more and more people use it.
Sure, but how do you? But in a country where price is important, how do you enhance customer experience?
Yeah, so I didn't answer your question. How do you set price? We don't set price. So what we do now is we allow the customer to bid on the price that they're willing to pay. So they can roll a wheel down and say they will wait, but they want something cheaper.
Yeah.
Or they'll roll the dial up to say I want it faster, but I'm also willing to pay more money for it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that request goes to all these drivers, and then they send counter offers back. And wherever the counter offer matches, we will deduct a commission from the driver.
Fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, we don't set the price at all. All we set is the parameters. So for example, let's say you need to have surge because there's a football match happening at a certain hour, right? So what will happen is automatically the parameters of the fare or the price that the customer can bid will move up.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So the hurdle will go up.
Yeah.
So we're automating a lot of things. Like we're also, for example, automating driver acquisition, right? So in driver acquisition, you can once you've authenticated a number through WhatsApp or through through Facebook login, you authenticated the user. Then what you got to do is basically solicit their vehicle information. But vehicle information, whether you're in the United States or whether you're in Pakistan, is all available online. So we're now connecting the state database and allowing a real-time check of whether the vehicle registration is valid or not, right? And you can do the same with the national ID. And so I think you can automate things as much as you can automate them in the West. You just have to figure out what the cost of basically onboarding is going to be. And I think where most startups struggle is they can't optimize their user acquisition cost. And if you can't optimize that, and you have to acquire a lot of users because you're in a country like Pakistan where it only makes sense if you can acquire a lot of users, and you can't optimize your cost of acquisition, then you're going to be in trouble.
Fair enough. Yeah. But you mentioned the rider acquisition. 65,000 riders.
Yeah.
That's a huge number.
Yeah.
But they're not all working for you all the time, right?
No, they're part-time.
They're part-time. They're working for other ride-sharing companies as well.
Yeah, they can.
Some of them.
Yeah.
How do you compete for these riders? Or are there enough to go around?
There will never be enough.
Why do you say that?
Because human beings are addicted to speed of transaction, right? So the more drivers who come into the fold, the faster the pickup ETA is to you.
I see.
And when that becomes very, very fast, your propensity to drive yourself will also go down. So for example, in a city like Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, you press a button and by the time you walk down the stairs, the motorbike or the car is there, waiting for you.
Is it that fast?
Yeah, and no one's ever called you, right? You haven't called to check where they are.
Yeah.
And if it becomes that easy, right? Because it's not even that fast, for example, in many cities in the US.
Of course not. No.
But if it becomes that fast, then people like to be treated because you're being chauffeur driven.
Yeah.
Right? Even on the motorbike, you're actually being chauffeur driven by someone.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, of course, this person can go buy a motorbike themselves. But no, this person, if they can spend the next 20 minutes listening to a podcast or music or talk to someone or just not have to worry about the stress of traffic, right? And just chill.
Yeah.
They can. And human beings are lazy. And I think ultimately, if you can make things faster for them,
they'll go for it. They're willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
They're willing to pay for a service at whatever price point, they're willing. But I forgot to mention Bykea. That's a great name. How did you come up with that? Who came up with it? Did you come up with it?
I did come up with it.
Yeah.
So I was toying with a bunch of names, and I wanted a .com. And the reason for that was that I was like, at some point, if we want to go international, you don't want a .pk or your country's domain, right? So you want a .com. And so I looked up and I saw that it wasn't trademarked anywhere.
I see.
Right? And so you that's very easy to do as well. But the Facebook account was owned by this girl in Thailand.
Okay.
So I got a friend of mine to negotiate on my behalf, and I think we paid her a couple of $100
Okay.
and got that Facebook account. But Bykea comes from motorbikes, of course.
Of course.
Because bike in Pakistan, a motorbike is called just called a bike, right?
Yeah.
But buy, the English word buy, and Kia in our language means to.
Yeah.
So also to buy,
Yeah.
you know, so there was that connotation that we were probably going to make it hyperlocal commerce as well at some point. And then of course bhai, which is basically brother in our language as well. So it was just a good name. And
it was a very successful campaign. A very successful advertising campaign. That
so for your audience who doesn't know this, it's become a verb for motorbike taxi. Right?
Yes, it has.
So people say, I will Bykea it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and
it's become synonymous, right?
Yeah, because there was no culture of motorbike taxi prior to us launching this.
Yeah.
So we pretty much
built the category. You built the category and you built a word in our language, which is great. In terms of Pakistan as a country to do business, right? They say there's never a right time to start a company, but in your experience, was it the right time when you did start Bykea?
Yeah.
Obviously, because you were the first one to do it. But then the economy did take a downturn, right? Yeah. Did that stop other competitors from coming into this region, giving you a greater advantage?
Yeah.
Or do you think the economy could have stayed at high levels and you would have been okay with greater competition? What do you prefer?
In a strange way, when the economy is doing well, international competitors pour in, and they pour in millions of dollars to try and crush you. And so you've got to raise millions of dollars to stay afloat, stay around, compete. And in a strange way, the downturn in the economy has actually been beneficial for us.
I thought you'd say that, yeah.
Okay. And the question is why, right? So our business is based on an excess supply. So there are enough drivers out there who may not be full-time drivers, but will look at where you want to go and try and send you an offer back to negotiate with you. So the sheer number of gig workers increased, right? Because people, as things got more expensive, as inflation kicked in, people wanted just a little bit of extra income before they went home.
Yeah.
So supply started to move in our favor. Then a lot of folks who would take a car ride from A to B, as things got expensive,
they started taking bikes.
They started taking bikes. So in a strange way, we've actually had a great year, right? Now, of course, the price of petrol or gas has played havoc with where pricing needs to be when it's negotiated. And so there's a lot of like anxiety there. But I think in the last 2 months at least, ever since basically petrol prices have stabilized, and the politics have also stabilized a little bit, because there was a lot of nervousness prior to that, and uncertainty which was driving the FX up, right? People just didn't know what to trade at, whether you were buying or selling a car, or whether you were trying to move from A to B, right? So there was a lot of anxiety there. And I think that has kind of dissipated now.
And you're in a great place now.
Yeah.
Having broken even with a stable economy, with a reasonably cautiously optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
It is
because it's a basic utility. People need to move from A to B. Yeah. Right? That's not going to change, right? Now, of course, like my propensity to order toothpaste in 10 minutes is going to diminish, right? So quick commerce has taken a beating because it was just a flavor of the day. But I still have to move, right? And so in a strange way, ride hailing, which was not sexy a couple of years ago because other things were sexier, distribution was sexier, or buy now, pay later was sexier, some sort of fintech was sexier. In tougher times, in times of inflation, it is the basics and technology which deals with the basics that actually tend to do okay.
Yeah.
And so we've been fortunate in that sense.
You've been very fortunate.
Yes.
So in terms of, raising money, how, and there's an anecdote where an investor walked into your office many years ago. I'm not sure if you want me to say this, but we can we can cut it out if you don't want me to say it, but an investor walked into your office and he offered you a large check, and you said, actually, that's not enough. We don't take a check less than X size.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to raise money, and what was your experience in terms of doing that, particularly in the early years when the burn was quite high?
Yeah. Listen, it's never easy to raise money, but I think if you look at the last few years, right, access to global capital was there because money was being printed, and there was capital to be put into more risky bets around the world, right? So if the bank was not giving you good return in the US, you took the extra pile of cash that has been printed and you would put that into crypto, or you would put that into a startup in China. But when China, post-COVID, became a no-go area, a lot of that money started going to Latin America and India. And some of it trickled into Pakistan. Unfortunately, during that boom cycle, we were not a sexy business. There were other models that were sexier, like the Baiju model was very sexy as well, right? Which is edtech in India. And we've all seen sort of that collapse. So I think money's always available. The question is at what terms, right? And I think if I were to do it all over again, right, I would not raise money at a seed level. I would bootstrap, get product market fit. Of course, that means I need to have some level of capital.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And that's the problem. You know, most founders
don't
have no money.
Yeah.
Right. But hopefully, if I'm successful in this cycle, I will start something where I don't take seed capital, get product market fit, and then figure whether I want to get VC money or not. Because when you take VC money, VC is looking for a VC return.
Absolutely.
Right? So the value of your business needs to grow exponentially. And that is not always easy to do. Right? Now you can muck it up, as many companies did, giving a lot of money to Facebook and Google, and we did too. And you rake up the orders, or you give discounts, or some coupon or promo, and you rake up the volume of transactions. But it's a house of cards if it's subsidized. Yeah. Right. And when the music stops, the numbers also crash.
Or when the tide goes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think listen, money is hard to get, but I think if you have the right narrative, and strangely and ironically, if it's the flavor of the day, you'll get attention, and you will get money. But I think as a responsible founder, you have to be very honest with yourself and question the unit economics of the model that you are spewing. Like, does it really make sense or not? Are you actually solving a problem or not? So I'll give you an example. I mean, a lot of people got really excited about distribution, e-distribution
logistics
apps, right? And I don't know where the tech is there, to be candid with you, because it's just basically a catalog, right? That you're giving to basically a retailer, and you're placing, you're placing your app supposedly in their hands. But where's the tech, right? Like, I think if you asked me if this was tech about 10 years ago, when Daraz was being made, when there were no catalogs, where there were no digital catalogs, that would have been tech 10 years ago. But today, there's no tech. Same with WeWork and these models, right? And why am I so fussed up about tech? Because many investors will be like, why do I care whether it's tech or not? I just need a return. Intrinsically, what tech is supposed to do is it's supposed to accelerate your growth.
Okay.
Right? That you don't need the input costs of headcount to essentially scale. Right? That's what tech is supposed to do. And you're hoping that your top line or your revenue is going to keep growing, but your cost base is going to stay flat, right? Yeah. And if your model is not that, then...
And it also gives you a competitive edge, right? It keeps the others out.
Yeah.
With your, yeah.
So I think you've got to figure out, you know, how you're going to be able to extract any amount of money, right? What scale you need to be able to basically pay your salaries and your rent, and if it's going to take a couple of years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and for us it's taken us about 6-7 years, right? Yeah. It's okay, but as long as you know where it can land. Most people basically are very, very clumsy at their unit economics, you know, and they buy false dreams. Like, I don't think...
But there are some founders who sell false dreams as well, right?
Sure, right. I mean, you know, listen, I mean, there are founders who build businesses for a trade.
Yes.
Right? They don't care whether the economics pan out or not.
And,
right?
And there are
the
some
model.
VCs who invest.
Sure.
For trade as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as they can pass the buck.
Yes.
Right? You know, many companies in our space have also, you know, played that game and played it very successfully and made money for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, I think fundamentally, if you look at the long term, what are you really trying to do? Like, I'm not motivated just by money. I'm motivated by building something that is going to be around for a while.
Yes.
Right? Now, these are very different motivations to many much more successful entrepreneurs than myself, right? Who've been focused on the trade multiple, and that's all that counts, right? And that's fine. I mean, if they're happy, basically, you know, sipping whatever they're sipping at a beach in the Caribbean, fantastic for them. But at least to me, basically, I want to build. You know, I'm more of a builder, inventor than I am a trader.
Yeah. But on that note, so you've been doing this for, you know, Bykea almost 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Coming up to 7 years. Do you see yourself as a founder who is also a good CEO, or
No,
you know?
No. I think long term,
at heart, a founder who wants to then move on and do.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, what do founders do? Founders build, right? If you've got to stabilize at a certain point, then you need a CEO, right? So if once you get product market fit, okay, which in tech is you're always chasing the product because there's always something basically that someone else is doing a tad better, right? But the day that kind of stops, you need a CEO, because that CEO then is someone who's not motivated by something new, but they're motivated by basically the P&L, and that's what investors are looking for.
And I think you're almost at that point now, aren't you?
Yeah, almost at that point. I think for me, I need to figure out how I can make sure that Bykea survives for many years.
Of course.
And you know, if there's a partner that we can partner up with over the next few years, absolutely. I think we are a real business. You know, we've got probably the largest battalion on the ground.
Yes. Yeah.
That is not the military.
Yeah.
You know, and we can reach anyone in 5 minutes, right? And I think that's just
in any of the urban centers.
In any of the urban
Pakistan,
centers,
which is amazing.
Yeah.
A country of 215 million people.
Yeah.
Any of the urban centers, you can get there.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
And you built that, and it's sustainable, it's profitable. That's a great achievement.
Yeah. I mean, the beauty of tech is that it has mapped everyone to a mobile number. Like Rabel Akhund is recognized by, you type in wa.me, whatsapp.me, / the country code 92, and the next 11 digits is Rabel Akhund, right? And now that mobile number is mapped to your national ID, your passport, your mobile number, your Facebook account, your Google account, and suddenly basically everyone's a number.
Yes.
Now I have to figure out what it costs to get Rabel's number, and then what can I sell to this person, right? What can I sell to this person digitally, and what can I sell to this person basically that's tangible? Because now I know where he lives, I know the room he sleeps in, I know what time basically he wakes up, because that's when my app also
comes online.
So there's a lot of data that is available. The question is, what are we going to do with it?
But what are people going to do with it?
That's the thing. No one's really figured it out beyond advertising.
But no, I think people are figuring it out, right? And some of those users can be quite scary.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, look at elections, right? Like what behooves me is that why we need to go and vote.
Yes.
Right. When in reality, we could all use our smartphones to not move anywhere and vote for the candidate that we want, and it could be all very private. Blockchain or whatever technology, whatever databases we're talking about, fundamentally allow data to be aggregated and structured. And so the future of voting, I think, is going to be on mobile devices, right? The future of any service is also going to be on mobile devices. The future of education is going to be on mobile devices. Maybe you'll have like a Chromecast that makes that display a lot bigger, right? Maybe that display is going to become like a 3D through projector. So I think education, I think healthcare. I'm an optimist for the future, not just for the world, but even for Pakistan, because the one asset that you have is you have a lot of people, right? And a lot of people who are coming of age, and a lot of people you can influence as well, right? And I think the advantage people like you and I have is that we can be translators for them to trade with the world, right? And if we can do that well,
if we can enable,
we'll make money for ourselves, we'll make money for them and their families. And we'll connect them to the world. And I think there's nothing more beautiful than that.
And make life much better.
Yeah,
absolutely. But that population of 250 million, right? So you've already touched upon the fact that, if you were to start another business, how it would be. So I was going to ask you, what would you do next, right? Would it be in Pakistan or would it be somewhere else?
No. So I think I've thought about the fact that like a lot of people are also, with the macro crashing in Pakistan, a lot of people like, this is not a country to live in. We should move somewhere else, which is where things are a little more stable. I think that Pakistan is one of the cheapest countries to live in, right? Food is very cheap here. Cost of living is one of the lowest in the world, right? And I think as long as you have a low cost of living, you'll have talent that can be cheaper than talent in the rest of the world. And now this talent also speaks English.
Yes.
Right? So I think basically the wave that India saw in the last decade or two is something that is going to come to Pakistan a tad later, but I think it's ripe, right?
Yeah. And it's inevitable, right?
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
And I think it's a good future that like people like us can leverage.
I agree with that. I mean, I think, and I'd be interested to know what your view is. But it's kind of we're at the tipping point, right? With a bit more macro stability, right, and consistency in government policy, which will result in that macro stability. Pakistan is very much at that tipping point where it can just accelerate at an exponential level.
All we can hope is that it happens in our lifetime, but it's going to happen at some point.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're only hoping it happens faster.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And I think...
I mean, you and I feel a sense of urgency, right?
Absolutely. Like, I've printed the weekly calendar till you're 90. It fits on an A4 piece of paper. And I've kept it in front of my laptop. And every Monday when I get to work, basically, I cross off one of the other weeks. We don't have a lot of time.
You don't have a lot of time.
And we're assuming we're going to live till 90. Some are lucky to be
Yeah.
around till 90, and we're halfway there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there's not a lot of time.
I don't know if, and you never know if you're playing your last inning, your second inning, or your third inning. You just don't know, right? One wishes we're in our second inning,
Yeah.
but there is always a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I don't ever want to retire, and I don't think most people
Yeah.
who hustle, I don't think they want to retire, right? And I think if you can keep playing these new innings, right, and still be excited about
Yeah.
it, right? It's all about the narrative that you sell yourself,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And I think Elon Musk, there are a lot of good things about him, a lot of bad things about him, but like one thing is that he keeps finding a new inning to play,
Yes.
right?
And plays it very well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and people like dreamers.
Yeah.
People like hope.
And you're a bit of a dreamer, right? So what's the next thing? I mean, if you're at liberty to share with us.
I don't.
Maybe not the
honestly,
exact thing, but
Yeah,
what
but
would you like to do?
I think there are two opportunities that I think about. Right? So one of them is about finding talent anywhere in the world, right? So let's say you are a company in Singapore, right? And you're looking for a financial modeler, right? Why should you only look in Singapore? Why should you only look in Bangkok for that remote talent? Why can't you look for that talent in Argentina, right? I think the future will also solve for translation of language
Yes.
electronically. I think it's going to become
Easier.
through AI. It's going to
Yeah.
become very, very easy. And I think being able to arbitrate or broker, talent mapping around the world is going to be a good opportunity.
Yeah.
And of course, that opportunity prevails in Pakistan as well. Because people are always going to be cheaper here, right? Because the cost of living is lower here. So I'm excited about that. I think the world is becoming a lot smaller. The ability to reach people or reach the right person is becoming a lot easier as well. And I think whatever I do next will pander to a global product rather than basically focusing on a nation, a region. I think a global product would be one that is easier to get dollars in, because everyone's looking for those dollars, right?
But it's interesting that you mention the world is getting smaller. So you are a proponent of globalization. You can see the benefits of globalization. You have benefited yourself, and the business has as well, particularly with the inflow of capital. But has globalization really helped those at the very bottom rung of the ladder, particularly in developing countries like Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because what globalization feeds to you is that if someone can enjoy tea in London, I should also be able to enjoy tea in some boomtown basically in Pakistan. Right? I would want to wear the same kind of clothes. I can have the same kind of accent. I can have the same kind of vacations. So I think there's a lot of aspirational anxiety that has come with globalization. There has also come a lot of cognizance of polarization, where people with different opinions about how they live their lives are also being, a lot of opinions are being forced down your throat as well. So in a sense, globalization is making people a lot more anxious. But I think long-term human beings, the bottom of the pyramid, if they're not creative to sell a service or a product to someone in the world, they will become useless but they will still live a good life. Why? Because food's going to be cheaper. It's cheap today. It's probably going to be cheaper in the future with more agri-tech. Entertainment's going to be cheaper.
It already is.
You know? And they may just be happier 20 years from now, living in a small room, not being married or having any children, and still be happier because they are fed just the right amount to keep them content. So,
well, that's an interesting existence. I don't wish that upon anyone.
You know, you go to villages around the world. A lot of people are content. A lot of people are content with very little, right? So on the one side, there is this anxiety about competition and aspiration, but on the other side, like just digitally being able to feel that you have it,
yes,
is gonna change the way people live. And so there may be a very small minority that is actually building things, and a very large majority that is consuming things, and that's going to be no different to how it is today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So now let's come to Muneeb as the person, right? How many times did you think of giving up completely? Bykea.
I think there was this one time when I saw my comparables, the companies that I had that had inspired me founding Bykea. When I started looking at their valuations, take a tank, they were just stacked, and their stories change, their narratives change. I just felt dejected and kind of fooled that I was following a path that I no longer believed in. And I think while you should be inspired by bigger examples around the world, you should not try to copy them verbatim, because they can make mistakes which can be very, 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 very costly as you get bigger.
Yeah.
Right? And the last thing I want to do is see myself as a dejected founder, because ultimately, you wake up every morning, there's got to be a purpose doing whatever you're doing that day.
Yes.
Right? And if you're dejected or you're not convinced,
then why are you doing it?
Then it's a miserable life, right? So I think there's been an instance, but I think it requires a lot of self-reflection. It's not easy. You can fall into depression as well, but you've got to pull yourself out and recognize that you've got to stop thinking that the people who say they're smart are smart. They're not smart, right? And you've got to go back to first principles, look at things, and figure what you can solve. And everything is solvable. Sometimes you've got to find your own path, and your own path is the wiser path for yourself. That's what we've been able to do at Bykea, to be candid with you. Had we followed the path of Kareem,
yes,
I think we would have been dead.
You pivoted at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, the founders at Kareem made a lot of money, but if you ask me about the business model today, questionable.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm glad we didn't take that path.
That's true. But talking about paths, so you have, and you've shown it to me in your home, a family tree.
Yeah.
Right? And for you, it is very important to know where you've come from. You've traced that back quite a few generations. Why is that?
I mean, I think everyone is trying to figure out their narrative, right? And I think if you have had privilege that has come down generation upon generation, it's also incumbent upon you to not be a goof up in your life, right? So I think basically whether it's the family tree or whether basically it's singing singing praises for your parents, grandparents, great grandparents, ultimately it needs to make you a little guilty to be worthy of something rather than basically just living off rent, right? And I think for me, it's that. For many others, that's the only way they can show significance.
And validate themselves.
For me, it is the other way around.
It gives you a sense of responsibility and purpose. Yeah.
Because, with all the privileges, if you still goof up, you're a goof up.
Yeah.
So I think, I look at many people I know who live meaningless lives. They may be...
Okay, sorry, maybe you can continue.
Yeah.
But what is it to live a meaningful life for you?
There needs to be some purpose, even if you're anxious the next day, or there needs to be some purpose. If you wake up in the morning and there is no purpose to life, there's no purpose to you doing anything that day or that week, that's a really boring life. Then the only thing that's going to excite you is buying a certain brand or driving a certain car, right? I think you've got to be motivated with something to do as opposed to just chilling out. Chilling out is great. I mean, I love chilling out, but like...
And I want to talk about your bucket list as well.
Yeah. With bucket lists, I mean, the thing is, I met...
You just tick something off in Hawaii, right?
Yeah, I just did. So I met this friend of mine who had a very fancy car, and there was a video log about him in that very fancy car, and I said, "What a show off you are, right? Showing off your fancy car to all, to all the poor people out there to be envious of you." And he was like, "Man, I had a health scare, and after that, I said, everything I'm going to do it for myself, right? I'm going to and he said, I created a bucket list. And the bucket list is not like a 10-year bucket list or a 20-year bucket list, right?
It's a now bucket list.
It's a now bucket list. It's like 2 years from now. In 2 years, what do I want to do in 2 years, right? And imagine if you only had 2 years and you make a list of the things you really want to do, right? What is that list going to be, right? And it can't be it can be something ridiculous and aspirational, but you've got to be realistic about it because you want to tick it off.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to do that. There's a Google Doc on my phone. I'll pull it up and I'll remind myself what my bucket list is, every week or so. I'll come every Monday and cross my week off. So we don't have a lot of time. And listen, my bucket list can be completely different from your bucket list. Whatever panders to you, right? Yeah. And whatever makes you happy. Like for me, basically, I want to do Everest Base Camp. I've done K2 Base Camp. I want to do Everest Base Camp. And I want to do that in the next 2 years.
Sure.
Right? I want to own a 1957 Rolls Royce. A particular shape and design. And I hope I can do that in Pakistan. If I can't, on eBay, you can get it anywhere between I think $30,000 and $80,000 in the US, right? So I've got to go buy that 1957 Rolls Royce. Even if I buy it for a week and sell it, but so it's just random stuff like this.
And things that make you happy.
Things that make you happy, because it's a short life, and many people say, well, you're living for your kids. You're not living for your kids, you're living for yourself. I mean, you hope to provide a good life to your kids, but you're living for yourself. You came here.
Actually, and that's not a bad way to look at it, because if you only live for your kids, then one day you resent it, right? Because
you resent the fact that you missed opportunities.
Correct. Yeah.
And so but
it's a bit of a balance.
The balance is tough.
The balance is yes.
And the balance is tough actually everywhere in the world, but it's tougher in Pakistan because in Pakistan basically you have outsourced a lot of your help, but that also makes you a lot more social.
And there are more demands on your time.
And there are more demands on your time.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. But so what about the influences in your life? I mean, who are the people who've influenced you the most into becoming the person that you are?
Yeah, so I think
both professionally and personally.
Yeah, so I don't think that there's a single person. I think I don't watch Netflix or movies or any of that stuff, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. So one of the podcasts I listen to a lot is Impact Theory, and so I want to hear intelligent people talk, because I kind of miss that, because being in Pakistan, you don't get the opportunity to like randomly walk into a bar in the US and meet some very intelligent people from completely different walks of life, talk about completely different things that are fascinating and doing fascinating things. So podcasts allow you to listen to intelligent people talk, and you know, everyone is trying to improve their performance on a day-to-day basis, whether it's the performance of chilling out or whether it's the performance of basically work, right? So there's no particular individual that I look up to, because everyone you look up to will always have a flaw as well.
Of course.
Right? And there's a problem as well, like even for yourself in your own success. If you're the tallest puppy in the field, you'll be chopped off the first. You know, people are looking for that one chance to basically pluck you, right? So you've got to be a little cognizant of that. You know,
anyone from your personal life, your family, anyone.
Yeah. So I think my brother has always been an inspiration for me for being resilient. You know, he helped me get through college and all as well. So he's quite resilient.
He's 5 years older.
He's 5 years older. In my family, my mom's uncle was Ayub Khan, so I kind of look up to him as well.
I see.
You know, I think he came from
the
small town.
The former president.
The former president. He came from a small town. He did wonders for this country. You know, he ruled the country for over a decade, and basically transformed the agricultural sector, the industrial sector. And I think my own grandfather as well. My own grandfather was the youngest general in the Pakistan Army. So a lot of these folks basically did good, big things. And you know, it's a responsibility for us to also do big, good things here, right? You know, if you pluck me out of here and you take me to Mozambique, no one knows me in Mozambique, right? For me to drive impact in Mozambique, it's going to take me many years, right? Sure, there are a lot of people who've moved to the US or
of course, and
London and done really well for themselves, but
very well.
They've spent the time there. For me, basically the time, if I look back the last 10, 15 years, has been here.
Of course.
Right? So for me to basically suddenly go to Mozambique and have impact out there it's going to be a lot harder. So it's a lot easier here, I think it's a lot more fun here as well. So
okay. Well, now something I ask all my guests is horizon of expectations, right? So over the course of our lives, what we expect from life and from ourselves changes. Right? When we are teenagers, it's different things. When we're young adults, it's different. And as we grow older with families, with children, it's different. How has that changed for you, and where are you now in your second inning?
So I think money matters. I think for the longest time, I was not as fussed up about money as I should have been or could have been. Because your dependencies increase over time, and those who are dependent upon you are also have some level of expectations. But in terms of horizon, I think we are privileged to be where we are, and we have a responsibility, but also an opportunity to do big things, right? I'll give an example. So someone reached out to me yesterday from, I don't want to say exactly where, but another country, right? That was a connection that you basically made with me.
Yes.
So that was your network that came asking me for references to a network.
Yes.
And I think your role and my role is to essentially help expand the opportunities for people from around the world.
Correct.
To connect with the relevant stakeholders in our parts of the world. And I think that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's our horizon.
Yes.
Right? That's our field.
That's our field. Yeah.
And
that's a circle of competence.
That's a circle of competence.
Yeah.
And it's great to have that privilege as well.
Yes.
You're making things happen through the small things that you're doing, right? And I think that's a good narrative for yourself as well, right?
Yes.
That there is some purpose to. So, for example, this podcast. You know, I hope that whoever listens to this podcast also recognizes that there are people who are trying to make change, and who are quite similar to them as well.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, tomorrow you'll take off the suit, and you'll walk the streets, and you'll be able to basically mesh in that environment, and be completely comfortable in that environment,
Yes.
and then switch gears and be comfortable in a completely different environment. And I think that chameleon capability is beautiful.
Yeah, it's like the Kipling poem, right? To walk with kings. I can't remember the full phrase, but it's if from Kipling. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Pakistanis have that to a large extent, right?
Yeah,
they do. They are quite resilient. We have to be living in Pakistan. We have to be, and they can switch quite easily. They can adapt quite easily, and that is a wonderful quality which, as a nation, we have within us.
You know, and we're at the crossroads of trade. You know, the Middle East is booming, and I believe will continue to boom over the next few decades.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you've got China right next to you. You've got India right next to you. So I think I hope we reach a stage where we don't need visas to go anywhere, and everyone can travel like in a snap, around. But I think we're smack in the middle of it, right? And we've got to enjoy the party, because there are pockets that are really driving change.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people talk about NEOM in Saudi Arabia, right? And talk about how ridiculous that idea is. But I think that's the beauty, right? That it is so ridiculous, it is so far-fetched, that if someone is able to achieve that, that would be phenomenal, right? And I think that hope and inspiration and the opportunity
to dare to dream,
to dare to dream, and for us to be so close to where it's happening.
Absolutely, right? We're right in the belly of it, right?
Yeah.
We're right in the and not just the Middle East. Look, India as well.
I have been advocating for the longest time that there should be no visa to come to Pakistan. People should be able to fly into this country, visa on arrival.
Yes.
And particularly even for Indians. Why? Because if you can get 1 billion people to come visit you once every year, once every 5 years, it's billions of dollars, right? So I think we need to stop thinking about security in the frame that we've thought of it up until now, right? And think about economic security, food security, energy security.
I mean, this region that we're in, right? You've got China on the north.
Yeah.
You've got Middle East on one side. You've got India and the Far East on the other side. It's a wonderful hub to be in, with 250 million, with a corridor that can connect China to the rest of the world as well, to the deep water port in Balochistan, Gwadar. Yeah. It's a fantastic opportunity.
And of course, globalization has also polarized people, and
Of course it has. And the world is becoming increasingly polarized, right? But the opportunities are there.
But the opportunities are there.
Absolutely. And the phrase was to walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. So,
I mean, imagine the energy corridor that Pakistan can be.
Yes.
You know this better than I do, right? Yeah. Because you're in the midst of it. You're doing all these deals for all these energy companies. Yes. We're smack in the middle of basically the corridor for energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's an exciting time to be here, and it's exciting for you, and it's been it's been exciting to have this conversation as well.
Absolutely. And I think what most people don't know is that you and I were actually forum members.
Yes, we were.
In Entrepreneurs Organization.
In EO. Yes.
So
we know each other quite well.
We know each other well. Yes. Yeah. And it's been good chatting with you.
Muneeb, thank you so much for coming. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.